Everybody doing?
We're fine.
So obviously the word has gotten out that we need to be able to hear the questions better in the press conference.
No promise on the quality of question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's never been a promise on that since I've been here, has there?
Seems really dark.
All right.
These aren't. I don't want.
I don't know if that's bold enough.
It's there's that whole bank is out.
Yeah, it looks like.
What about the far left?
Apparently us having a press conference today snuck up on some people. We good? Good. Thank you guys for coming. It's great seeing everybody. Obviously coming off, it was a great opportunity for us, to stay sharp and continue to get work in and do the things we needed to do to clean up some areas that we felt like we could focus on, but really an opportunity to just get rested and get healthy. And I think we tried to play that balance as best we could. You know, it's been when you get that bye week after week 5 and you kind of head into this back run stretch of the season, what you really want is a fresh team. You want a fresh team coming out of the week, and I think we were able to accomplish that. And so I was excited to get back out there on the field today. You guys are excited for what's coming, and it starts Saturday night against NC State. Looking at them, obviously an extremely talented team. I think what they're doing defensively jumps off the page. I think they're very explosive. They're very disruptive. What they're doing in the front six is causing a ton of disruption. I think they lead the ACC in sacks. Peyton Wilson is having about as good of a year as any defender I've seen in my recent time watching this game. I mean, he's all over the field making a ton of plays, and so he's obviously a kid that we've got to spend a ton of time prepping for. And then, they've got a really talented secondary. The corners are really elite at covering. The safeties get heavily involved in the run game, and they're very physical tacklers. And then on offense, obviously last week they made the switch to MJ Morris, and I think, that ignited a spark in everybody. I think obviously, Brennan Armstrong's a kid who's played a lot of football in this league and is a really talented kid, but I think everyone around MJ stepped up, and I thought what you saw last week against Marshall was a complete offensive performance. They threw the ball well. They ran the ball well. They were really physical on the offensive line. They played extremely hard, which they always do, and they were able to really hang a lot of points on Marshall last week. And so this is a really talented team coming in. It's a crosstown rival. It's a game that, obviously we're excited that we're playing every year now, just because of the proximity of the two schools. It's certainly something that you feel like should happen, and so excited for the opportunity Saturday night. And then from an injury update, just to stop you guys from asking, Riley's dealing with an ankle. He's day-to-day. He's recovering. He's making really, really strong progress. He was out moving around, throwing the ball this morning. We'll see what happens this weekend, but I do think the outlook for him is really positive for the rest of the season. So we'll see when we can get him back. We'll just list him as day-to-day for now.
Mike, was he able to do anything last week, or was it just recovery?
Last week was recovery, yeah. Last week was recovery and getting him into a position where he could be weight-bearing, which he is now, and so now he's able to kind of move around and start the process of getting the thing back into a position where we feel comfortable that he can go out there and play the game the way he's capable of.
How do you feel about Henry's preparation and his ability to play in case Riley can't?
Yeah, so Henry was available against Notre Dame, and so he was dealing with something UConn week, but he was back and ready to go for Notre Dame, and obviously Henry's a kid that we've got a ton of confidence in, and and we certainly believe in very strongly, and so if that's ultimately what has to happen, Henry will go out there, and we know he'll be ready to go.
How much does it factor into the decision of whether Riley goes or not, that running is such a big part of what he does?
I don't think it matters. Obviously, Riley's such a huge competitor, and when he's ready to go, he's going to go. And I think the one thing that he's extremely competitive in every aspect of his life, and so he's attacking this rehab about 6-7 hours a day. And so I think he's on a mission to get back and not miss any games. That's kind of his thought process. And so, again, we'll see whether that's a reality or not. But, when he's ready to go, he'll be our quarterback.
Mike, what are some of the characteristics that Beelan brings that lead you to be confident that he could lead this team to victory?
Yeah, obviously he's got tremendous arm talent. He can make all of the throws. Anytime we've put him in position to go out there and have to execute the offense, he's done it. Anytime you've got a quarterback making a first start, there's obviously a little bit of nerves around that. We had the same conversation last year going into the opener with Riley. You never know until you know. But certainly every indication is that Riley's ready Henry's ready for the situation, and we're excited for him to go out there and get it done.
Mike, let me ask you about your defensive line, excluding that final touchdown play. The defensive line really stuffed Notre Dame's running game, which is one of the better running games in the country. Can you talk about that position group?
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, we brought back a ton of depth, and that was something, again, that we talked about in preseason camp, that was what we felt like was a strength. We felt like our defensive line was a strength. I know there was some questions asked about depth, and I didn't know where any of that came from, is what I told you guys, and I think that's played out that way. We've got a lot of guys. We're able to rotate through a lot of bodies, and, we've got 3 defensive tackles playing at a really high level, Jamion Aeneas and Dwayne, and then we're bringing in Aaron Hall now, and he's getting a lot of reps too, and we feel really comfortable every time he's in the game. And so, it's a great starting point through the inside part of it, and then outside we've got a ton of depth. Wes Williams and R.J. Oben at the end spot, VJ, Ryan Smith at the drop spot, and Anthony Nelson getting healthy again and getting him back into the rotation. And so we feel like we're 9 deep at the defensive line, and so I don't know that you can get better than that.
After the Notre Dame game, you said you needed to look at the film to see what happened on that 4th and 16. How much post-mortem have you done on that?
Yeah, a ton. Anytime you get into that type of situation, you make the call that you think is the best call for the moment, and I would still hold to the call that we made, but when it doesn't work, you obviously rethink everything, and people ask me, you'll get over it. I said, sure, just like the Bowling Green Toledo game in 2013 on 4th and 9 when we gave up, you get over that stuff so quickly. But no, I think what happened was, when you go back and look at the technical side of it, I thought Sam did a really good job of getting out on the perimeter and pausing. He got out on the perimeter and paused and actually kind of pumped downfield, and that caused our second level to kind of open and retrace to try to find where he was looking. And I think he just was really decisive and put a foot in the ground and went and beat us to the sticks. It's really what happened. He just beat us to the sticks. I think we were probably a little bit hesitant because I think we were still thinking he was going to throw it. And I think that split second of hesitancy is what ultimately got him across the line. And so, obviously, listen, we wish we could do it again. We wish we could do it better. Wish we call something different. You think about every way you possibly could when you're in that situation, because certainly it's tilted in your favor and you'd like to take advantage of it. But, like everything, you got to move on and you got to get ready for the next one.
Coach, how important was it for you to have the week off to, adjust, get over the loss, after a heartbreaking loss at that, but have your players mentally just kind of refocus, adjust, and get ready for NC State on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think kids are a lot more resilient sometimes than we give them credit for. If you think back to last year, we couldn't have gotten our hearts ripped out any more than the Carolina game. And the very next week, we went on the road and went down and beat a Miami team down in Miami, And so to that extent, I do think, there's a resiliency that kids have and that we have that you kind of rely on. And I think when you put as much into this as we do and most teams do, the ability to bounce back always is there, and we know our goals are still in front of us. We know all those opportunities are still there. What I think the bye week gave us was rest and health. I think that's, we talked about that a little bit last week, but it comes at such a good time after week 5 because it's really the midpoint of the season when you factor in the 4 weeks of training camp. And so it was the right time to just step away, recharge, replug, and come back ready for the final stretch.
Mike, as someone who spends so much time with defense, what do you see when you look at Tony Gibson and what this Wolfpack defense has been able to do this season and really over the past couple of years since he got there?
Yeah, I'll talk more about this season than the other ones because I didn't pay much attention to the other ones, to be honest with you. But they're really disruptive. I think they're very confident in their system. They know what they're doing. He's obviously been running the system for a very long time, and he's been running it now at NC State for a while. And, when they made the transition to go to this, I think they had this vision in their head of, a very disruptive, very active group that that was really talented at the second level and really physical at the first level, and that's certainly what they've become. And so I think, like I said, I think they have 21 sacks on the year. They're really disruptive. They're hard to find angles to run the ball against. They do a great job of shedding blocks, and then they can cover, and that's the piece of it too that goes in. And so you don't see very many weaknesses, and I think yards will be hard to come by for sure Saturday night working against them.
Coach, I know he's dealt with injury in the beginning of the season, but are you hoping to get Jalen Coleman more involved in the rushing attack coming off of the bye moving forward?
Yeah, it's a really hard situation. Jalen's a great kid. He's a really talented back. But we have two backs right now that are playing at a really high level, and so, as much as we want to give him those opportunities, he still has to get in front of those two guys, and so, we've stayed a lot healthier this year in the backfield, which is probably really good for us by and large, and maybe not great for Jalen getting his opportunities again. But he's out there working hard every day. He's getting better every day. He's obviously a kid we have a lot of confidence in, and if the situation arises or the time arises, we'll certainly call his number, and I know he'll be ready.
After you had the 2 missed field goals in the last game during the bye week, have you found anything that may have led to that, or what kind of work have you done in that area with Todd?
Yeah, listen, Todd's been great. I mean, we literally has been great. All last year, he's been great all off season. He's been great in practice. He was great in practice again last week. He didn't miss a kick. I think what we looked at technically was the angle he was stepping his steps off. We felt like we're blocking his hips, which squared the ball up, which pushed it. So I think there's a technical element of it that we focused on, but Todd will go out and he'll kick the ball through the uprights. That's what Todd's done since he's been here. For whatever reason, it just didn't happen the way he wanted it to last Saturday.
Will Graham Barton be available?
Yeah, Graham's back, practicing, full go. No issues with Graham. I think had we played that game Monday night, not Saturday night, we'd have had both Graham and Miles ready to go. They were both really close. We just couldn't get them over the hump, and so both those guys will be back and ready to go.
How did Brian Parker look on film?
Really good. I mean, really good, and for a kid making his first start in that environment and against that defensive line, I thought Brian played really, really well. And so, obviously there's some technical things like there always would be, but I thought he competed. I thought he was assignment sound. I thought he gave us something. And I think he grew into the game as the game went on, and I think that was probably not necessarily him alone, but I think our whole offensive line grew into the game, and that was some of the success we had in the second half that maybe wasn't there in the first half.
You don't have as much film on Morris as Armstrong. Does that complicate things any?
I don't think so. I think, we go back. You got enough games from him last year. You certainly saw what he did against Marshall. You've got a ton of film on Coach Anai and what he's done, not only this year, but what he did at Syracuse, what he did at Virginia. Maybe to get a full scouting report on everything that MJ is and isn't, you probably don't have, but there's certainly enough tape to give you an idea on what to expect coming into this week.
What do you expect?
A really talented quarterback that can make every throw. I think he's got a big arm. I think he sits in the pocket and delivers the ball really well. I think he, obviously there was a little bit of angst, I'm sure, making his first start, and once he settled in, really put up some impressive, gaudy numbers on Saturday, and so, we'll have our hands full with him for sure.
They've had some issues with sorting out their running game in terms of which running back. They ran the ball pretty well, though, with Mims in particular against Marshall getting to the end zone. Do you see much in their running game that was different maybe in the Marshall game versus anything else you had looked at from them earlier in the year?
No, maybe there was, obviously getting the center back probably played a huge part in that. I think, getting the offensive line back settled the way they wanted it to be, I'm sure played a role. And then like everything, you bring in a new starter quarterback, and I think everybody looks in the mirror and tries to elevate their game. I think that's a part of it. I don't think anybody sat around and said, I bet it's only one guy that's causing us all the problems. But sometimes you got to make that switch, and then I think that sparks everything. And so maybe just a renewed vigor in how they were going about attacking the running game was what we saw.
From a program perspective, how have you all had a chance to look back on the whole college game day, sellout crowd, ABC? How impactful was that whole Saturday for Duke football as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about those two hats, right? And I think from a CEO hat perspective, that was a tremendous day for our program. I think the exposure we got on a national scale, I think it was obviously it was the first time we hosted game day, but I think it was also the first time we had an ABC primetime slot. And to go out and get that many people watching the game, that many people watching it, to have the atmosphere and the crowd that we did, I think that impacts everything. It impacts how people view your program. It impacts how recruits view your program. It impacts what people see as the ceiling of your program. Obviously, and again, we always talk about this. We are a company that's growing. We really are, and we're a company that's growing every single day. And but when you see a day like that, and you're able to point to that's where we're trying to get this thing consistently, I think people see that now as a reality. Whereas maybe 18 months ago I was just a guy talking. Now I think maybe it's like, oh, okay, like maybe this is something. Maybe Duke football can become this national brand that he keeps talking about.
The Duke-UNC rivalry obviously is big. Can states slip in there and become a rival like that, or is there room for two rivals for Duke? I mean, I can wear you down a little bit, these rivalry games.
Yeah, I think proximity creates rivalry. I think proximity creates rivalry because there's such a familiarity. Our guys know their guys. There's a connection through recruiting. There's a connection through playing each other in high school. Like, I think anytime, and this is probably the one thing to get on the grand stage for a second, but like, keeping the conferences a little bit more regional, like making sure that we keep in mind this part of football a little bit, which is these games are a lot of fun for the kids. When they get to go and they play the schools that are right down the road, and the kids that they're going to bump into all spring, and when they're out in Raleigh and vice versa, like those things matter. And I think, anytime you have proximity, I think you add a little bit to the game for sure. And so I don't know that it's necessarily I don't know that you count how many rivals you have or how many rivalry games you have, but certainly there's a little bit of an added meaning when you're playing a team that's 20 minutes down the road.
Earlier in the season, you talked a lot about when you had these bigger leads in games, getting some players opportunities to play, right? You look back at Lafayette when Henry goes in and goes, 8 for 8 for 118. In the event that he would play this weekend, how big does that go for his confidence and what he's able to contribute on the field?
Yeah, those snaps matter so much. And so, like, even go back to last week when you talk about Brian Parker. Brian Parker's starting for the first time, but he has not playing for the first time. He was able to get in a solid 50, 60 snaps in the beginning part of the season. And all of that stuff matters. Every time they get out on the field in live situations, I know to a lot of the fans, it's the end of the game and it's not as impactful, but for those kids, like, those snaps are everything. And if they take them the right way, it really helps in their growth and development. And so no different from Henry and no different from Grayson. Both those guys being able to have been on the field, to know what it's like, to know how to operate, to be able to know where the game clocks are, to be able to move at the pace they need to move at in the game, like, all of that stuff matters. And so, yeah, those are obviously things that they'll lean on when they get their chances.
Coach, is there a situation on Saturday where you monitor Riley all week and he tells you, hey, Coach, I'm ready to go, I'm good to go, but it's a situation as a coach, you want to maintain his well-being and make sure he's 100% before he gets out there Saturday night?
Yeah, 100% is funny because I don't know that anyone's ever 100% in football, but we're certainly, the kid matters to us more than winning the football game. There's no doubt about that. And that's regardless of pro expectations or anything. That's every kid in our program. The kid matters more than winning a football game. And so we're not going to put any kid out there before he's ready to play the game at the level he needs to play it at to be successful and protect himself and do all of those things. And so that's what we're looking for. I don't know if you asked any kid in our locker room if they told you they were 100%, but I think there's certainly a level that we feel the kid is capable of going out there and playing the way he wants to. And if he's not at that level, regardless of what he wants, he'll watch until he's at that level. Good.
Casey Concepcion has been so good for NC State this year as a true freshman. What do you see from him that makes him a danger when you play against him?
Yeah, I mean, he's electric. He's electric in the slot. He's really twitchy. He does a really good job of creating separation. He's got really good hands. That's a hard challenge to step into the college game as a freshman and have the impact that he has. But he was a really talented kid coming out of high school, and so it's not a surprise that he's doing what he's doing. He's really talented, and obviously we've got to make sure we pay enough attention to him that he's not able to take advantage of us.
Coach, you mentioned the proximity of the matchup. NC State's first time coming to Wallace Wade in 10 years since 2013. First for a lot of the coaching staff, first for a lot of the players. What does just the excitement bring with these types of matchups? You mentioned the proximity, but just for something new for everybody to go through.
Yeah, I think it's, and I think Dave would say the same thing. It's crazy that there's a school that close that hasn't been to Durham since 2013, right? And so I just think, that was part of this getting rid of the conferences and the part of going away from divisions that I think we all agreed in was creating more of these opportunities to create some newness to games, to create some new opportunities. And so, yeah, that's certainly a part of it. And you factor in the fact that we haven't played them. A lot of our older kids who this is their last year won't ever play them again, and this is kind of a one-shot deal. Kind of creates a little bit more urgency and importance to the game. And then you factor in, two teams playing for, standings in the ACC and having a lot on the line, throw that in it too. And I think you're playing games that really matter and have a lot of high stakes. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Was it really?
Yeah.